while we're at winter retreat and then even after we're gone. So there's a few things I want to go over with everyone, and then here in a few minutes we're going to break off between small group leaders, if you're going to be with students leading small groups in winter retreat, and then our support team leaders doing all the behind the scenes stuff. And those folks will go down the hall with Patty and Carrie here in a few minutes. But first I want to go over everything that everybody needs to know. So first off, I said that my name is Clay and I'm just one person working on this. Brendan's been on this team, Callie from Bracken, and of course Patty Messamore, Carrie McCravey, Allison Ransom, and we've had 3 high school students from university that have had huge chunks of this retreat to make this happen. And I've been in touch with the conference office. They've been doing all the registration stuff for us, and so there's a lot of folks that have been involved in this. But I want you guys to know that this is an event where we're encouraging students to go beyond just knowing Jesus, beyond just saying, okay, yeah, I believe in Jesus. But what does that mean for your life, and taking a step into following Christ with our everyday lives and orienting ourselves, the entirety of who we are, into following Jesus. And so that's the focus of this event. So it's more than just trying to get students to know Jesus. We know that not everybody at winter retreat will know who Jesus is as Lord and Savior. And so hopefully our prayer is that they can meet him there, but the environment that we're setting is one where we're pushing on and we're following Jesus. We're reorienting our lives to follow him. And so I want to make sure you guys know that that's kind of the focus, that's the theme that we're pushing towards. So the overall theme that we have is, if you haven't noticed from our wonderful graphic that Alyssa Carroll did for us, it's freedom. It's not like America, patriotism, freedom, but instead about the freedom that we have in Christ, the freedom from the burden of our sin, the guilt, the shame that we carry, but instead the freedom and the life that we live because of Jesus. So that's what we're helping all of these students focus on this week or this weekend. And so we have that structured in a variety of ways. We're going to have worship times. There's going to be messages. Our speaker, his name is Brian Hull. He is a professor of youth ministry at Asbury University in a little town called Wilmore, Kentucky. He's super excited about coming down and being with us. And so he's got messages lined out. We're going to have breakout sessions that focus on this. All of it's going to be all about the theme of freedom. Everybody's going to get a t-shirt that has the whole logo on it and everything. But I want to make sure you guys are a little bit aware of the messages that he's going to do and that the scriptures he's going to focus on. He's going to have 6 different times. We're going to start with worship on Friday night. And he's going to try to focus on where do you get your identity or what enslaves you. He's going to be equating slavery to our identity. And so what is it that enslaves us? He's going to be looking at Genesis 1, 26 and 27 and the creation story. He's also going to be looking at a lot of New Testament parallels in John 8. And the whole weekend we're going to be focusing on the Exodus story with a lot of New Testament parallels. But he's going to be talking about the slavery of the Israelites in Egypt, the oppression that they were under, and the reality of the life that they lived. And equating that to us, to what is it that enslaves us in our lives. Then we're going to move on Saturday morning, and he's going to help us understand that God is calling you to something else. And he's going to talk about Moses' call story. And so this is the best part of it for me. I'm really excited about this. But we're going to look at Exodus 3 when the burning bush and God called Moses. But I really wish I had a copy of the logo here in front of us. But if you notice on the logo, that a lot of you guys have seen it there, it says freedom, it says Las Misiones Mission or Winter Retreat. But then it also has these strange symbols off to the left. Just symbols that you don't really understand what they mean unless you're going to hear the message from Brian. And so Brian explained to me that in the call story of Moses, God, if you remember, God tells Moses to throw down his staff in that moment where he's standing on holy ground and the burning bushes in front of him. Moses was a shepherd. He was a Midianite shepherd at that time. This was after he had left Egypt. And on these shepherd staffs, you would get it when you were like 12 years old, because you would be a shepherd just like your father was. And you would carve into these staffs the story of your life, the things that were significant in your life that happened to you while you're out there shepherding and while you're with your family and all that kind of stuff. So these staffs were super important to them, not only to like hit the wolves and stuff that try to come eat your sheep for protection, but also it was a story that told your life. And so God is saying to Moses, by throw down your staff, not only look how powerful I am, I can turn this into a snake, but also throw down who you are. Throw down who you were. I am making something new in you. I am calling you into freedom and not have to worry about the guilt and the shame of the guy that you murdered, or the fact that you can't speak really well, or that you don't have any kids yet, or all that kind of stuff that Moses was just dealing with. So God is saying to him, throw that down. And so that's what Brian's going to help us understand. Like, God is not remembering our past and holding that against us, but instead is calling us into freedom and life. And so I'm really excited about that. He's going to start covering that on Saturday morning. And so then we'll have these t-shirts with these random symbols on it, and they'll take them to school, and the people that weren't at the retreat will be like, hey, what does this mean? And the students will now have an opportunity and an evangelistic tool to tell them about what these symbols mean, about what they experienced at winter retreat. So that's the idea behind that. And then Saturday night, we're going to go into talk about how we can have freedom from our gods, all these little g gods that we put in our lives, and how the plagues of Egypt each represent how God is dominant and over anything that any of the gods of Egypt. God is actually better and bigger and more than any of those. His supremacy over all of them. And so how we can have freedom from those little g gods that we put in our lives. Sunday morning, he's going to help us focus on freedom from doing it ourselves. We're going to look at Exodus 15 and 16, where God is providing for the Israelites. We're going to talk about stories of God's provision. And then Sunday night, he's going to help us understand where we are looking. After we have freedom from Christ, where do we go now? Like, we have freedom to not just become slaves to something else. And the focus verses there are Exodus 17, verses 8 through 15. We're going to talk about the story where Moses had his staff raised while they were defeating the Amalekites, and then he lowered his hands and they would start losing the battle. So he raised his hands and they would continue to win the battle because that was the instruction God gave them. And then lastly, on Monday morning, he's going to send us off, helping us understand that we have freedom for relationships. And we're going to look at Exodus 19 and 20 and some of the marriage language in there to help us understand how we have freedom for relationship with Christ. Not to have to go back to our old gods, to enslave ourselves to the things that are little g gods in our lives. So that's a little bit about the theme. There's a lot of New Testament parallels that are going to go along with it. But that is a little bit that Brian is going to share with us. Brian is a great guy. There's some folks in this room that know him. Callie worked with him up there, and Trevor. But he's going to be great. I'm super excited about it. He's going to be awesome. So that's Brian. I also want to make sure, some of you guys were here last year, and Lo was a spoken word artist, and is a spoken word artist, and he did that last year for us.
Retired.
Yeah. Well, Lo was able to do some poetry last year at Winter Retreat, and he's going to do that again this year. He's not going to do it every session, but I think about 3 times we're going to have that. But we're super excited. That's a super unique element that not every youth event gets to have, so make sure you guys are aware of that. So, I want to highlight a few things on the schedule for you guys. Can I borrow the schedule? Thank you. Sweet. If you'll notice, we have it broken down pretty well. I'm not going to go over every element, but we do want you guys to arrive between 7:30 and 8. It does say 8:15 on here. If you arrive at 8:15, that's okay, but we're going to have opening worship at 9. So if you're later than 8:15, it's going to be hard for us to get everybody in their cabins and you guys to make opening worship. So please try to shoot between 7:30 and 8 for all of us, all you folks that are arriving. And we're going to have our opening worship, and then 4 times throughout the weekend, we're going to have small group discussions. And so small group leaders, we're going to go over a little bit of that here in a minute when we break off. But that's an important element of what we're going to have throughout the weekend, are these small groups. And the relationships and the bonds that form in these, even over the course of one weekend, can be pretty significant in the lives of students. So that's why we do that. You'll notice that we have on here a lights out time. We really try to push that to be lights out. So it says here 11:30, but you want to get the students to the cabins at 11 because they have to brush their teeth, they have to lollygag and do whatever. So, but then at 11:30, like, turn the lights out. Like, it's time to go to sleep. You are going to, actually I'm going to go over this in a little bit, but you're going to text Sarah Ryder if you're a cabin captain, and to let her know that your dorm is in and safe and good for the night. And so if she doesn't get that text, she's going to be worried. So make sure you do that.
There will be a list.
There will be a list.
In their folder that lets them know if they are the cabin.
Yes.
Cabin king or queen.
Cabin king, queen, whatever. But every leader there is going to have a folder with all necessary information, including Sarah's phone number, so you can text her. So So yes, a couple of things just for leaders from university I want to go over really quick. Registration is going to happen here in the lobby downstairs, the North Campus Narthex. Please arrive by 4:45 p.m. I know that's pushing it with work schedules and stuff, but please do your best to be here at 4:45. You'll put your luggage on the bus, and then you'll get a sign that says, "I am group whatever," and you will hold it up so the students that are in group whatever can come find you. And so, university leaders, it'll be really good to have some icebreaker type questions ready. If you Google icebreakers, there are tons of really good ones on there to do with your group while you're waiting in the gym. Because you're going to have, we're going to have 150 students in there in the gym, and we want to make sure that they're just hanging out. They're they don't have a place. We want to make sure that you're with them, you're engaging them during that time. So be ready with some icebreaker type of questions. Unless you have talked to me or Patty or Becky, we really need you to ride the bus with your group. If there's some sort of conflict, come let me know. But it is about a 2-hour drive from here, and each bus will have a bus captain, and so they will know exactly what to do when they arrive, so you can rest assured that you'll know what to do. Nick Mosley is helping by making sure that we have all of our medical forms for university people. He emailed several of you on Saturday. I think all of you, except for a couple, that he didn't have email addresses for. So please get us your med forms no later than Wednesday. That's super important. You need to turn that in to Nick. He's got his email address, nick@u.org, or you can bring it to the main office. No later than Wednesday. So yeah, if you need anything between now and then, just let us know. So info for everybody. Like I said a second ago, you're going to arrive between 7:30 and 8, and when you do that, you're going to go to the Camp Zephyr offices. It'll be dark, but we're going to have some vests, we're going to have some lights, and so you guys can see us really well. Some improvements from last year. But when you arrive, there is a kind of a long road to get up to the office from the street, so just be aware of that. So at check-in, leaders from other churches, at check-in. We need you to bring payment in the form of check or money order, and you make that out to the Las Misiones district. Please do not bring cash. The invoice I sent you already details how much you owe and how much is being scholarshiped and all that. Something new for this year is our medical information forms. We need you to bring the medical information form that was provided, that the district won, that was provided at the registration and all that. We need you to bring that alphabetized in a 3-ring binder or a 3-ring folder, and with your church's name on it. So you can hand that to our nurses, and it can be easy for them. Last year, Friday night was pretty chaotic for our nurses, just because there were all different types of med forms and they weren't alphabetized, so we didn't know who was who. And so this will really help us. So that's important. Please do that with your med forms. And then also, if you have students that take medication, please bring your medication in a box or a similar container with your church's name on it. And then the medication forms also need to be alphabetized in a separate 3-ring binder or folder and handed to our nurses with your church's name on it. So when you arrive, you hand over our medical information forms, medication information forms, and then any medications you have. They will be locked and secured by our nurses. Another thing that we need to have is proof that every adult has been background checked. That is super important. Every youth leader needs to bring that. When you arrive, students and adults will be told where to take your luggage and do all that stuff. So please do not bring over-the-counter medications or allow your students to bring over-the-counter medications. We'll have all of that stuff. We'll have Tylenol and Motrin and whatever else we have in the big drug bag. But we'll have all that. And adults, we need you as well to turn in your medications to the nurse. This is important. With this many people, we have 450 people coming. We have to be safe and make sure that we have control over our medications. And so the best way to do that is have it locked in the nurse's cabin. And so you, just like the students, will come and take medications at the nurse's place, or they'll bring it to the breakfast, or they'll bring it to worship at the end of dinner, at the end of worship, and that kind of thing. So please know that. The exceptions to that are like EpiPens and inhalers, because you need those with you if something happens. Obviously, that would be bad if you got stung by a bee and you had to run 100 yards to the nurses. Please do that. So you'll notice some other things on the schedule. Yes, Becky?
If you were on support team and you were staying in a locked hotel room,
If you are on a support team, yes. But everybody with students in the cabins. No.
I have one more question. So what are the other steps for that? Are they gonna be with the leaders?
Yes, if a student in your group has an allergy that requires an EpiPen, we'll give that, depending on the age of the student, we will give that to the leader and make them aware of it. Our high schoolers, they know the drill and they can keep that with them. But our middle schoolers, for the most part, need to have that with the leader because they lose it, they forget it. I hear they cost like $1,000 now or something. So, okay, a couple other things before we break out. Our breakout sessions. So you'll notice here we have 4 breakout sessions. These are times where we go and learn about a certain topic more in detail that's related to our theme. We have 4 times for that, both at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturday, and then 11 and 1 on Sunday. Each one will last 1 hour long. And you'll see on here there's a list of them on your schedule. And so we're doing it a little different this year in that we have 1 breakout session that's being taught by Lo Alleman on Saturday. And half of everybody will go to that at 11, while the other half of everybody is broken off into these 4 other breakout sessions. And then in the afternoon, the other half will all go see Lo, while the half that was with him in the morning will go to these other 4. And then on Sunday, it's the same schedule, except instead of Lo, it's going to be Brian, our speaker, is going to be leading a breakout session. And so you'll see some of the topics we have. Lo's going to be teaching on bearing God's image in a godless culture. He's going to be talking about Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego from Daniel and how they represented God in a pagan culture and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be super interactive and fun. Lo's really great at doing that kind of thing. We're going to have a theological Q&A for students to be able to come and just ask questions related to God. They'll have index cards. They'll write it down. I'm helping to lead that one along with Pastor Madeline Henners from First LaGrange. She's awesome and super great, and she and I are going to help lead that one. Charla Bell is a leader here at University. She's not here right now, but she's going to be leading one about finding balance and how to put God above all these other little g gods in this world where students have their time demanded of them in so many different ways. So how to find balance in that and how to have God, the real God, be supreme over all those other little g gods. And again, that will be super interactive as well. Callie Smith here from Bracken is going to be leading a breakout about spiritual disciplines. Do you want to say anything about that, Callie?
Sure. Yeah, we're going to be talking about them as means of grace, and even though the word discipline doesn't always make you think freedom right away, that's what they're for, and they're for us to be able to open ourselves up to the Lord's work in our lives, and so we'll have some different stations there so the students can practice some new ones that they may not have tried before.
Perfect. And then the last one on here, it says freedom stories. This is something we did last year, but there are some leadership students at university who are going to be sharing stories about how God has worked in their life and how they have found freedom through Christ as a result of God working in their life. And so they're going to be in a room, and you guys will rotate around and hear those stories and have an opportunity to ask each of those students questions. That one will be just middle schoolers going to that one, as well as the spiritual disciplines one is just middle schoolers going to that. Whereas the theological Q&A will be high schoolers, as well as the finding balance will be high schoolers. Like I said, Lowe's and Brian's, everybody will go to those at different times. So there's that. Patty has something to say.
Did you tell them there would be information in their folder?
I said, yeah, sort of. So there will be information in your folder. Your folder will have all necessary information. I think that's all I said, which is super vague. But it will have information in your folder about where to go, which group you are. Your group will be labeled, and it'll tell you.
There will be 8 different large groups, and there's a schedule that says which large group goes to which session at which time.
Yes.
That will be in your folder.
As well as phone numbers and the map and the schedule and all that kind of stuff. So there's that. So we'll have lunch. You don't need to know anything about that. It'll be good. Free time on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. So we've got a huge chunk of time that's just free time from 2 to 5:30, I believe. Yes. During that time, there are many options for your students. A couple of those options are organized games that are going to be happening at 2 o'clock is one time, and then at 4 o'clock. And so these times, everybody will go to that. But in between, people can go play Gaga Ball, or they can go play Nukem, or they can go do a variety of other activities that are available. But Brendan is going to be leading us in that game time, and the best game that's ever been invented is called Kickball Chaos, and it's super fun. And we're going to play that. It's 4 kickball fields at once, where second base is shared by all 4, and you can tag anybody out on any court or any field at any time. So it's a blast. So we're going to play that. And then we'll have 9 square in the air. A lot of youth ministries do 9 square now. If you're not familiar with it, it's like 4 square, except it's 9 and it's in the air instead of on the ground. So
Called 9 square.
a note about our ropes course. So there is a ropes course, a high ropes course available. However, they can only take 40 students a day. That's just the reality of what it is. So that means that not everybody will get to go on the ropes course. For those that want to do it, there's going to be a sign up in the cafeteria at our meals. And so on Saturday morning, if you guys want to do the ropes course, maybe your whole group wants to do it, get there a little early if you want to, and sign up on the thing so that you can be sure to get into the ropes course for that afternoon. And then again, it'll be available on Sunday afternoon. There is a waiver that is required for that, so I sent that in the email, so be sure to just have all your students fill it out, and then you don't have to worry about it when you're there. So yes, there is that. Oh, and then the next day, Sunday, we have a couple of different free time activities. Instead of Kickball Chaos, we have Capture the Flag Ultimate Frisbee, or what? Capture the Ultimate Frisbee. Nate is the inventor of this game. He's patented it, and he's a millionaire because of it. So, we're going to play that. And then we have another thing that's unique this year. We haven't done it in a little while, the Shaving Cream Bubble. So we're going to do that at 3:30. The Shaving Cream Bubble is a giant plastic bubble. I think Carly and Nate are going to be making that this week. We blow it up with a fan, and we put a little bit of water in and some bunch of shaving cream in it, and you run around inside. And everybody should wear goggles. You don't have to wear goggles, but it's better.
Eli, Secret Swear is not allowed to go do that.
And so bring messy clothes. We put this on the packing list. Maybe a swimsuit. But we're going to do that at 3:30 just so students have time to change and get dried and shower or whatever before dinner. But the shaving cream bubble's a blast as long as there's no menthol in the shaving cream. So we'll
It's a
regulate
running
that.
joke. It's been a couple years since you
A
broke
couple of other things. The other activities we'll have are crafts. We have some movies and board games that'll be available for those that aren't so athletically inclined. Basketball, gaga ball, disc golf, volleyball, or Newcomb. We're going to have tons of free time. But during this free time, I highly recommend that you pick one thing that your students can do together. And you guys everybody go to Kickball Chaos together. And then maybe your group, maybe half wants to do crafts, another half wants to play basketball. And then maybe you split off split your team up a little bit and do that. But know where your students are at all times. That's important. You should know where your small group is. And so, but I would highly recommend you as a small group pick one thing to do together. Hey, we're all going to the Shaving Cream Bubble at 3:30 on Sunday. You can do something like that. All throughout free time, there's going to be snacks and water available at a certain pavilion. And so we can stay well hydrated. Even though it's not going to be hot, we still need to push our students to drink water. So yeah, just be with students. That's important. All right, just a few more things before we break off. Let me make sure I have your attention. Our meal times, Camp Zephyr is great. Their staff will bend over backwards to do whatever we need. They've been awesome for years. But one thing they really try to push with us is to be on time for meals. And so we have our meal times on here. So please be on time for meals. That's important. We'll remind you of that. Carly mentioned a few minutes ago about our lip sync battle. University folks, you probably haven't heard about this yet. But Saturday night before worship and past, we've done like Leader Olympics where the leaders competed in something and they won a trophy or a cookie or something. But we're not going to do that this year. We're going to switch it up and we're going to have a lip sync battle. And so if you don't know what lip syncing is, where you pretend to sing while the music's playing, you sync your lips with it. So, lip sync battle. And so we won. Just cover my bases here. So our hope is that we have a pair from every church coming to compete in the lip sync battle. And you don't just stand up there and sing like this, like a lame-o, but you like get into it. Like,
How again?
Show us how.
Yeah, show us.
Jeff should show you how. One time Jeff competed in an air guitar contest for us, and he went a little nuts. It was great. You kicked the glass table. Unfortunately, it didn't shatter. But
Surprised me.
our hope, it's going to be fun. It's going to be something where the students can cheer on their leaders from their church. And it's going to be funny and a blast. So Carly sent an email about that, so she'll probably do it again, but she just wanted to make sure we know who's going to do it, and she'll be in touch with you on that.
And I forgot to mention that we got a great MC. Bubba's gonna be our MC this year.
Bubba!
Remember Bubba?
Is that Bubba?
I was Steve's
No,
cousin.
that's my cousin.
Oh, that's right.
It's strange.
We're going to have our dance on Saturday night. It's the holiday hoopla is the theme. So that means you dress up as like any holiday from throughout the year. So you can be Santa Claus or Halloween something or 4th of July something. You can be a tree for Arbor Day, whatever you want. But you just carry it. At the dance, guys, the dance, we've got a playlist that has a bunch of super fun hype songs. Please let your students, especially your middle schoolers, know that this isn't something where they have to like find a date and go ask a girl or go ask a guy to dance and do that awkward thing. You know, like, that is so awkward, and I don't want that. So it's just a dance party. It's crazy, upbeat, fun music that we do. So you can take that stress off of them. That's not going to happen. And then on Sunday evening, guys, we're going to have a talent show for our middle schoolers. We're going to have a sign-up available for students to sign up for that throughout, Friday night, all day Saturday, Sunday morning. So if there is some reasonably sized item that your students will need to take to do that, like a flute, great, but don't bring a tuba. It's crazy. But we'll have a piano and guitar probably available. I didn't even ask Paul about that, I should. But we're going to have a talent show for them. We'll have some trophies as prizes. Corey Parnell, she's a leader from University United Methodist. She's going to MC that and kind of run that, so it'll be fun. Our 9th graders and our 10th graders are going to have karaoke time. We're going to have 2 different places for karaoke. That's always been a blast. It's, I think, our 3rd year to do it. It'll be fun. And then on Sunday after evening, our 11th and 12th graders are going to have a campfire. And they're going to make s'mores at the campfire, but it'll be right next to a building where there'll be games inside. And it's just kind of a low-key hangout, be with one another time, and go to bed smelling like smoke from the campfire. It'll be fun. Last 3 things I need to mention. We have a no prank policy at Winter Retreat. So pranks have gotten out of control in the years past. So please, as students, like, I want to go and throw an Axe bomb into their group, or I want to go put Vaseline on their doorknob. Like, no, please just shut it all down. Help them have fun in other ways. Pop out and scare them, great. That's about the extent that we want to go. But we don't want to do pranks. It has caused property damage in the past that we have to pay for, and people's feelings get hurt. It just escalates. So a lot of these happen after lights out time. So just be aware that this is maybe the time where you need to, that's why you regulate and say lights out. So the other thing I need to mention is that as adult leaders in any United Methodist Church, we've all been trained in safe sanctuary policy. We all have background checks, all that kind of stuff. But I need to remind you guys that if you hear a cry of abuse, if there's any situation where you hear a student that indicates that they are in an abusive situation in their home or elsewhere, you are legally obligated to make a report to Child Protective Services within 24 hours. And so you can let me know if you've never dealt with that before and you need help, or your youth leader, you can do that, but you are legally obligated to make a call to them. I mention that because it has happened before, unfortunately, and so I need to remind you guys of our moral and legal obligation to report any abuse that we hear regarding students. Last thing, we're going to have a special place for only adults. It's called the Garden of Eden. And we used to call it the adult snack room, but we changed it to the Garden of Eden. It is going to be a room in the tabernacle. Yeah. Oh.
There are 2.
2 Gardens of Eden. Excellent. So we're going to have 2 Gardens of Eden, but the idea is it's a place for you guys to go and take a break for a little bit. There's going to be snacks in there. There'll be like microwavable things. There'll be a lot of fruit, cheese, sodas, water. For you guys to go and refresh for a minute. Don't hang out in there all free time for all 3 hours. But you guys will be in at least 2 leaders in every group. And so you might say, hey, I'm going to go to the garden. You make sure they're good for a little bit. And you go and you hang out for 10 minutes and then you can switch. And just doing that sparingly. But we want to try to support you guys well. We understand that the work that we're doing this weekend is tiring and taxing. So we hope this helps a little bit. And you just go in there and get what you want and then go back and be with your students. But it's not a thing where we're like sharing it with the students. Oh yeah, hey, who wants a soda? Like, let me go get it. No. So, what's that?
Are we only allowed to go into the garden during free time or any given time?
During free time.
Free time?
Free time is really the best time for that. So
No, it's just.
it's the only time. Only during free time. Yeah. But that's a huge chunk of our day. Each afternoon is 3.5 hours. So. The Garden of Eden. Who is it that always hangs out in there like the whole
There was
time?
coffee there in the morning last year. That is not one of the locations. There will be coffee in the morning.
But there will be coffee.
But there will be coffee.
There will be coffee available.
Will there be decaf coffee?
Yes, but there will be a general
I have to bring
information
decaf.
that will be in your folder. We'll tell you exactly where you can find coffee in the morning.
Everybody will have the phone.
It's all decaf.
All right, guys. We're gonna break off here in a second, but Brendan, Carly, Callie, is there anything I'm missing? Important information they need to know?
Like how many students are
You're great.
Scott asked the question, how many students are coming? We have 450 total people.
It's about a little over 300 students.
A little bit.
Almost 150 adults.
300 students and 150 adults. This is kind of a lot of adults for us this year. We don't usually have this many, but it's going to really help our support team folks to have extras this year. So last year our total number was 477 for this event, and so we're down a little bit this year to 450. So, all right. So at this time, I'm going to ask everybody to stay seated while Patty and Carrie stand up and walk out the room so they can lead you where you need to go. So if you are on the support team, you are going to follow Patty and Carrie out the door to another room, and they're going to go over everything you need to know. Go.
I don't know if I can. Clay.
Yes, nurses as well.
Clay.
The support team will be supporting us from behind the scenes, but you guys are the ones that are going to be with the students for the whole 72 or close to that long hours. And so I want to make sure we're all on the same page on some stuff. I want to equip you with some tools to use during this important work that we're going to do. And yeah, so I want to make sure if you're a university leader, you saw here on these pieces of paper the who you are partnered with and which group you have, like which age group. So like Lauren can go over there and see she's with 7th grade girls and whoever her partner is. So if you haven't done that yet, you can. So small group times. We have 4 small group sessions that are happening throughout the weekend. And you will see here on this thing, which will be in your folder, but it shows, this is the guide to guide our small group time. Kelly Smith put this together based on our messages from Brian, who is going to be speaking to us. But I want to go over a few things on how to run small groups well. And so you guys can take a few notes on that on this page that says small group practices so that we're on the same page. First of all, in our small groups, I want you guys to know that we do try to stay on schedule at Winter Retreat. Like, it's important we're at meals on time. That one's like non-negotiable actually, but it's important we're at worship on time. We do free time and all that kind of stuff. But if you need to go long in your small group, maybe you guys are having a really great discussion. There's been some vulnerability. Students are opening up. And to just say, oh, well, it's 2 o'clock. It's time to go, guys. Let's bounce. That would be really disruptive. Do what is best for you. Like, you don't feel like you have to do that. If you need to go a little bit long, the sun will still rise tomorrow and Jesus is still alive if you're 15 minutes late to the next thing. But at the same time, do try to push it, the students, so that we can get on to the next thing in time. The middle school students, it's not going to be a problem. The high schoolers, though, a lot of times they'll go longer and they'll go deeper. We're having great discussion. And so if you need to go a little bit longer, use your discretion as an adult to do what's best. So I just want to make sure you guys know about that. So a few things on this thing that says small group practices. I want to go over a few best practices that'll be helpful. If you're a university Resemble group leader, you've probably heard this from me before, but we've added a couple of things. With any group of people you are leading, there are some things that hold true. And on the first blank, it says you must be relational. Your students don't care about what you know until they know you care. So it's important that you work at learning things about the people in your group, even by the conclusion of Friday evening. Know your students' names. Call them by their name. Know something about them. That can be huge when you go up to them at breakfast the next morning and you say, "Hey, little Joe, I'm so glad you're here. You know, what about that volleyball game the other day?" Or whatever you play. You know, that's a bad example, but you know what I mean. Bad example. So I want to make sure you guys be relational. That's what's most important in small groups. The second blank says Acts 2:42 is a great goal to shoot for, but it takes time and it's not going to happen overnight. We read in Acts 2:42 how it talks about all the believers were of one mind and they shared all the possessions and they constantly prayed to God and praised God for all that He had provided for them, and daily He was adding to their group every day. That sounds awesome, but that may not be the reality for us right to start. Some of us will be coming in leading groups from where we already have a history with this group. You know, if we're the Resemble group leaders for university, or maybe it's your whole youth group in one group from another church. Y'all know each other a little bit. You continue to build off of that. But you might have new students in there. So it'll be important to have patience, to know that it's not going to happen overnight where we're going to have these awesome small groups where everybody's confessing sin and coming to Christ immediately. So just know that. So the job of a leader, number 3, is to act as a flipper in a pinball machine. So in pinball, you don't score points when the ball is touching the flipper. You score points when it's hitting all the doodads in there. So that next blank would be winning happens when people are thinking and talking, not when you are lecturing. A lot of us, sometimes we have a tendency to continue to talk a lot, and that doesn't give our students an opportunity to talk. So asking questions instead of just giving statements or lecturing is always better. So that is important, which leads into number 4, don't be afraid of silence. So if you ask a question and it's just crickets and the students don't respond, inside you might be saying, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like they don't like me, whatever your mind goes to. But reality, a lot of times students are thinking. And they don't want to be the first one to speak maybe sometimes, but a lot of times they might be the first one to speak, but they need a little bit of time to think. So count to 8 before rephrasing the question. Not out loud, that'd be weird. Count to 8. What's your favorite thing about it? 1, 2, 3. So, but don't be afraid of silence. Know that though that can be a little, that can provide a little anxiety at first, allow it to happen. Number 5.
Some scientific method thing that you came up with?
Yes, I conducted an extensive experiment. No. 8 is just a good number based on some actual real studies I've actually read. And what? And it's symmetrical. It's divisible by 4. Thank you. But 8 is just a good number. So guys, to have your attention, please. Number 5 is that we can look to Jesus on how to be a good small group leader. That's actually what he did, is he was a small group leader with his disciples. He taught with different methods. He taught with direct speaking, like he told people exactly, like, this is what I'm trying to say, or this is what you should do. That did happen sometimes, and so there is a place for that, but that's not the entirety of what he did. He also taught in parables. He also taught with experiences to learn with. So if you remember when Jesus sent out the 72, in pairs, to go out and heal people, cast out demons, proclaim the gospel in my name. That is an experiential way for them to learn. And so students, and leading small groups of students, we can give experiences as well. And we can take the experiences we're having at Winter Retreat and use them as teaching things. So those 3 bullet points are direct speaking, parables, and experiences to learn with. B, ask a question back when you are asked. This is a great tool. You don't have to do this every time because it can probably be annoying. But if a student says to you, well, what does Jesus mean here when he says, you are the salt and the light of the world? Instead of saying, well, this is what he means, the salt is this and the light is this, like that's okay. But what's better is when the students are talking. So you could say, well, what do you think it means? Or maybe you can open it up to your group. You get it from one student and you can say, what do you guys think it means to be the salt and the light of the earth? Like, what is salt and what is light? And you can have a discussion about it and a conversation rather than just a quick answer that shuts down conversation. So responding with a question is always a good tool. And then C, have patience. This is super important with students, especially our middle school students. You guys have about an hour for small group time each time, but if you're like with those 6th graders or those 7th graders, and you get 10 minutes of students talking about their experience with the message or what they thought about what Brian said or that worship song, 10 minutes out of that hour, that is a victory. So the other 50 minutes, we may be talking about whatever 7th graders and 6th graders talk about these days. So, but that's okay because our primary goal is to be relational so that we can lead students in discipleship through relationships. That's what's most important. And then number 6 on here, give people the power to go second. So what I mean by this, sometimes in a sensitive topic, you could go first so that others feel comfortable to share after you do. Maybe it's not a sensitive topic, but you could just say, all right, I want everybody to go around and talk about how they felt God in worship last night. And you could say, well, I'll go first. So by you speaking first, it kind of makes it to where everybody's like, okay, this is something I can actually do, instead of making a student feel like they're the first one that has to speak, which can be nerve-wracking sometimes. So you don't have to do that every time, but that's another tool that you can use, is giving people the power to go second. So a couple of other things, if you turn the page, wash your hands. You don't remember that? Anyway. So small group facilitators, they're all about engaging a group so we can explore these questions together. And so there are some things that we can do that inhibit this and things that we can do to encourage it. So 1 is making a safe and confidential environment. So what I would recommend for your small group is the first night, spend a few minutes forming a covenant. You can explain to the students that a covenant is an agreement that you guys are going to abide by while you are here. What are the rules of our small group time and that kind of stuff. And in that covenant, you can say things like don't speak while someone else is speaking, or hold your bladder until after we're done, or whatever you want to say. But one of the things that's always good to add is to say what is going to be said here in this small group stays in this small group. And helping and getting everybody to agree to that. And so it's not, you don't have permission to leave your small group and go tell your friends in your cabin what was said in your small group. That's important in creating a safe and confidential environment. Of course, the exception to that as adults would be if there was any sort of cry of abuse or indication that a student is harming themselves or something like that. But also, number 2, under making a safe, confidential environment, is be willing to talk about tough stuff in a manner that's open and honest. If you are uncomfortable, the students will be uncomfortable. They will pick up on that. Tough stuff, things like sex or gossip or drama or drugs or things like that, that might make some students uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. That is, neither of those is the focus of what we're talking about at Winter Retreat. We're talking about the freedom we have in Christ. But if we're not willing to talk about that, if it comes up, then students will not be either. So that's important as well. The second point, asking the right questions. Ask open-ended questions instead of yes or no questions. So if you ask a question trying to get your small group going, and it's just a yes or no, then that's what you'll get, and then you won't have a conversation or a discussion. So if you ask an open-ended question, such as, how did that make you feel? Or what did you think about this? Instead of, did you really like worship tonight? That's better than did you really like worship tonight? You'll see on our small group leaders, the reason you have this is for you to review this week so that you can be ready for the discussions next weekend. We give you lots of tools in here. There are many questions for you guys to use, and they're all structured in a particular way. The first page gives you instructions on how to use this tool, and so these are the questions that you use to go through during your small group time. If you don't get through every one, that is okay. If you're in your discussion and you see the next question and you think to yourself, wow, that question's really stupid, that's going to shut down my conversation, then don't do it. That's okay. Like, use these as a tool for you to use for you guys to do what's best for your group. But please review these during the week so you're prepared next weekend. But we'll have more copies in your special folder. So another point I want to make is about listening. Avoid answering your own questions. So if you ask a question and nobody knows the answer, I mean, yes, you can give the answer, but ask the question again in another way. Get the discussion going instead of just answering the question right away for yourself, or so that they know. Allow the students to answer questions. Like I said earlier, allow for silences because students often need time to think about an answer to a question. If you get uncomfortable with silences and just answer the question or ask a new question, you might have missed out on an opportunity to share some or for some wisdom that a student might share. So allow for silence. So this next one can be important because we're sometimes not aware of it. Instructing using scripture and stories rather than stories only about yourself. And so what I mean by this is that if you have a story about yourself to share, make sure it's relevant and instructive, and do it rarely. Instead, try using scripture or the stories that Brian tells, or other stories maybe of things that happen at the weekend that you can use to help teach and guide and stuff like that, so that you avoid talking about yourself all the time. It's not that your stories are the worst or they don't matter, but if we always at every small group session are telling stories about ourselves, they can make it look like it's the you time show instead of a discussion time for students. Of course, if there's a story that is relevant and is good for this, tell it, of course. But just don't do that constantly all the time because it makes it about you, and students can pick up on that. Last two things, support the other leaders. This may go without saying, but it's important that you affirm what they say and don't just say the opposite of what they say in front of students. And so, to me, to just be like, no, Jacob, actually what you just said is wrong. What he should have said, like, don't do that in front of students. Short of them saying something heretical or blasphemy or whatever. But I don't anticipate any of us will say that, so you don't have to worry about that. But at least support the other leaders. Say things like, ooh, did you hear what Brendan said? That was really good. Or make sure you guys listen to what he is about to say. Stuff like that. And the last point is doing icebreakers. Doing simple icebreakers in games can get things moving and encourage interaction and participation. They provide positive momentum for small groups. One, by helping students feel comfortable, and two, by setting the tone for listening. So I highly encourage you guys to plan a couple of icebreakers. Just have them in your tool bag to be ready to go when you get with your groups. One good icebreaker is 2 truths and a lie, where you tell everybody in the circle has to go around and say 3 things about themselves, 2 things of which are true and 1 which is not true. And then everybody has to guess which one is true and which one is not. And so that's a great tool because it requires us to listen to other people, so it sets a tone for listening. It helps us learn about other people, and it gets great conversation going. I always stick one in there like, I've got 6 toes on my left foot. And if it's middle school boys especially, they're like, what? Like that starts a 3 or 4 minute conversation about things that we can use. And I'm like, no, I'm real sensitive about it. Like I don't want to show you, and then I can let it go for a day or 2. So. But yes, icebreakers are important. A couple of last things that we can do to inhibit engagement and discussion in small groups. 1, by making statements instead of asking questions. Answering our own questions, as I already stated. By being demeaning, Now, I do not think anybody in here would purposefully demean a student or like would invite them to come on this retreat so you could be mean to them. I don't think that at all, but we can actually be demeaning in ways that are not open and obvious. By one, not affirming what students say. So if you're in your small group and a student says something, inside they might be freaking out because they are taking a huge step of faith and a leap to go and talk in front of other people. They may know them, they may not know these people, like what are they going to think when I say this? That can all be going on in their head. And so if they say something, they've taken a huge risk. And for you to just ignore them, or to maybe they say it, they're done with their sentence, and then you move on to somebody else without affirming by saying, man, Trevor, that was really good, or thank you for that, or thanks for adding that. Even those small statements have a huge impact. It affirms that what a student has said is valid and good and contributes to the group. And so that's important to do. Affirm what students say. Also, we can be demeaning by laughing at what they say. And so, of course, if a student tells a joke, they need that they're being funny, of course we laugh at them. But sometimes students are trying to be funny, and we can laugh at them, and then that'll shut down conversation for the rest of the weekend. The example I always give, I've given at university before, is we had a student one time, he came up to me, did not know anything about the church, came to us from the neighborhood, his parents weren't involved, and he said, Clay, tell me about that story where Jesus is floating above people and shooting fireballs at them. And he was serious, and inside I was like, what? I wanted to laugh, but I stopped myself, and I was like, tell me about that. And he said he's had like 5 stepdads and live-in boyfriends and stuff like this with his mom, and one of them was anti-Christian and told him this ridiculous story about Jesus shooting fireballs at people. And so what it turned into was like this 30-minute long conversation about what Scripture is and what the Bible is and all that kind of stuff. And had I laughed at him, he would have been embarrassed and walked away. And so that's what I mean by that. Sometimes students' level of knowledge, we might think it's at a certain spot, but in reality it's not, especially for those that have not grown up in the church. So be careful about laughing at students. We also inhibit engagement by undermining other leaders. We do that by not affirming what they say. And then making our stories about us, or as a competition. So Jacob might tell a great story about this one time in football, and I'll be like, well, the one time when I was in football, like, don't do that. That's just weird. I played football. I did. 7th grade. Was that 1 year? They told me I couldn't play anymore because I was too much of a beast.
It's called your parents meaning that we're laughing at.
Yes, I'm being demeaned right now. All right. So, a few last minute things for you guys. I want to remind you that students should be with leaders. You as leaders should know where your students are at all times. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go hold their hand when they're going to the restroom and stuff like that, but just like, if a group is going to play basketball, then go play basketball with them. If a group is going to go to the Gaga Ball pit, go to the Gaga Ball pit with them and know where they are. If you end up being a dorm captain or a captain king, that means you are responsible for making sure everybody in your cabin is there and texting Sarah Ryder at the number that will be in your folder and saying, hey, we're all good, everybody's here in cabin number 7 or whatever. Med distribution procedures. So our nurses are going to have all the meds, and there'll be meds at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and bedtime. Usually are those 4 times. Breakfast and dinner meds will be in the cafeteria. So the nurses will bring that to the cafeteria. And bedtime meds are typically done at worship, at the end of worship. So before we go into our small group or whatever our next thing is, if you have students take meds, we'll make an announcement and we'll make sure everybody goes over there to the nurses to do that. If a kid is sick, you can call the nurse. Their number will be in the folder. The cell reception at Camp Zephyr has greatly improved in the last few years, so we're totally fine with that.
Clay, who are the nurses?
Our nurses are Megan Thomas, Jackie Kemp, and then Jennifer Joyner. Jennifer is from Coker. Megan and Jackie are from university. They're out in the support team meeting right now. I should have introduced them earlier, but we'll introduce them Friday night. You'll see them. So if a kid is sick, you can call the nurse, but use discretion. A lot of times kids, they just want attention, and we have to go walk over to the nurse's station, or sometimes they're homesick, that kind of stuff. I say this so that we don't have to send, like at 1 in the morning, every night, sending a student over to the nurse's station or walking over there with them. The nurses will be they'll be sleeping in a cabin, and if they're needed in the middle of the night, they will act, of course. But it'd be really great for them not to have to get up at 1 in the morning to give a kid 2 ibuprofen because their head hurts. And so just use discretion, work with them on that. It may just be that a student needs to sit and talk for a little bit and realize that they'll be home in a couple days, that kind of thing. So use discretion, but they're there to help with any and all medical needs. So if a kid is actually sick, they have a fever, we'll call their parents and they will need to go home, most likely, but we leave that decision up to the nurses. When it's lights out time, I just said that. Count your students and text the person. That's Sarah. A lot of times, like I said, not every student here knows Jesus is Lord and Savior. So it's important that if a student says to you, yes, I want to accept Christ as that, help them understand that this is not the end. They have not arrived because at camp they said yes to Jesus, but that this is just the beginning and that there's a next step. So university leaders, we're going to have stuff in our folders to help students understand what those next steps are, what those opportunities are in our student ministry here. And other groups, I highly recommend you tell the students this. This is just the beginning. We have stuff going on Wednesday nights, and we've got summer mission trips and all this stuff to help you grow in your faith as you continue through school. But know that that's important. That it's a next step. We have not arrived, kind of thing. You as a small group leader, you do have some authority with your students. So if there are discipline issues, handle that as best you need to. If you need university leaders, if you need me or Lo or Taylor, if you haven't heard, Taylor's now going to be on our staff as of tomorrow, or anybody else, please let us know. We're here to help you. But you as a small group leader can say, no, you're going to sit here and help me with this because you wouldn't listen over that, or whatever it is that you need to do. But just know that you can kind of take care of that kind of stuff. Most of you guys are really good about that. So if there are weapons, drugs, etc. that you discover, you can take them away. But that person's youth leader needs to know about that. Other youth leaders, if that happens with anyone in your group, please let me know. So if you're in a small group in Northern Hills and one of Carly's students brought some drugs, you need to call Carly, but then Carly, please let me know. I need to know if any of that stuff makes itself known at camp. And then lastly, cell phones are not allowed at winter retreat. Please help us enforce this. They're a huge distraction from what we're doing there that weekend as students. So we put a watch on the packing list this year. And we'll have cell phones. If a student needs to make a phone call to their parent because they're homesick, let them. That's fine. But they don't need to have phones. It's distraction, and we don't want that to be a part of things there. Most of the students actually enjoy it and realize how much they're missing out by Sunday when they haven't had their phone for 36 hours. So they realize how much they're missing out by having their phone at all times, Yes, Amy?
And I just want to reiterate, because it was hard, last year we were in a mixed cabin, and some of the church leaders let them bring phones, and we had said no, and that just puts everybody kind of in a hard spot.
It does. That makes it really awkward.
If we can have a uniform, that's awesome.
The rule uniformly is no cell phones. That is important.
Not an Apple Watch.
Yeah, same thing. No Apple Watch. It's a phone.
Since it was on, I know.
Yeah.
But I just.
That's a good point.
So if they have their Apple Watch, it probably means they have their phone because it doesn't work without your phone, right?
The new ones do.
Oh, the new ones do. Apple Watch is the same thing.
So we should probably specify as tablets too, no smart devices.
Yes, no smart devices, only dumb ones. No laptops, iPads, cell phones. I recommend you give your parents your phone number as the youth leader. Say, call me if there's an emergency. Or the Camp Zephyr phone number. I put it in the email, and it's on Google. So, what I ask of you guys over the next week, we're going to wrap up here, is to please be in prayer for this weekend. We have got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 5 nights between now and when we'll be with our students, where we can be on our knees before the Lord, praying for whatever it is that the Holy Spirit is going to do there, praying for the preparation of all of that, praying that the hearts are being prepared of all the students and even the adults that are going to be there. Prayers are definitely our most powerful tool, way better than small group discussion suggestions and breakout or icebreakers. The best thing we can do is pray. So please pray each and every day between now and winter retreat for the event. And then also, please prepare in your small group discussions. That's why we gave you this doodad. If you need to make notes, if you want to go through it and realize, oh, this scripture really ties well into there, and be able to bring that up, that can be great. But please prepare for this discussions by just reading this over this week. And then keep your youth leaders informed about this weekend. If something would happen where you couldn't be there, they need to know, because we need to know, because we'll have to adjust rooms and stuff like that if people can't show up. So anything that's going to affect your time together with us this weekend, please let your youth leader know, or me know if you're a university leader. That's all I have. Are there anything else that maybe I missed that would be good for everybody to hear? Amy?
For small groups, if we have small groups, are they combined with other small groups, or is it just kind of bunch of those small groups?
That is a great question. Patty has put together the small groups from everybody, from all the other churches, based on what you emailed me. And so most of the churches are going to be a small group in and of themselves. But there are some that are divided, like you guys, Northern Hills, you guys have several. But there are no churches that have told me this year that they want to just be a part of the other groups. So, yes.
Clay, can you send out reminders? It's going to be cold, so sweatshirts aren't going to cut it. Because last year we had a couple kids that only brought a sweatshirt and it wasn't enough. Because it's going to be in the 30s.
Yeah.
It's going to be cold.
I put on that packing list to pay attention to the weather forecast, but we'll be hitting our social media this week. This may be our coldest winter retreat yet. We've always had beautiful weather for this. So, except at T-Bar-M that one year.
No, Lakey.
Oh, that was before my time. Coldest winter retreat of the last 8 years.
So this year is winter.
Yeah. Anything else that maybe we need to would be good for the good of the order, Jeff?
I remember a year where everybody got the flu. We got that.
Yeah, so at the front of every meal line, there will be a couple of support team folks with hand sanitizer. So everybody sanitize their hands before they go through to prevent mass sickness. Who's in your group? You will find out who is in your group, university leaders, on Friday at check-in. We don't like to reveal that information yet because we don't need to do that. Yes, guys, hold on. We have one more question. Suzanne has something important.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, I think a lot of you know that Northside hasn't done exams yet.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if we could create a room, a silent exam study room for the afternoon when they have free times. Is there a place that they can go? And it's just off limits, like a library.
Yeah.
You know, that if they go there, because kids, I mean, I love them to play kickball, but I'm speaking to my mom.
Sure.
She needs to, they need to study. And the other thing is they need laptops. And I know that's, but maybe because they're running tests and practicing things.
Yeah.
Practice eco,
Right.
something's doing a test. Is there a place we can create a room with some Wi-Fi access to help these kids?
There might be, yeah. I think we could, I'll talk to Patty about that. I know we have spaces. Patty helps me do all the logistics and stuff like that. So, yeah, we can maybe do something like that. So I'm thinking of a couple in my head right now. So, yes, thanks, Suzanne. I will see what we can do. All right. Well, would you guys join me in prayer real quick, and then we'll bounce out of here. Jesus, we are just humbled that you have given us this opportunity to minister to these students, to minister to the adults as well, God, to everybody that's going to be there. Just this opportunity to advance your kingdom this coming weekend is huge. So God, we pray that you prepare us to do that well, that you can give us health and wellness over this next week so that we can go into it well, that we can be rested and ready to pour into these students. I just pray that you can prepare everything. We prepare the band, the Paul Trejo band, Brian, our speaker, all of our small group leaders, everybody, God, and prepare the hearts of all the students that are going to be there to receive you. Be with us as we go from this place. Bless us and each of our families. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen.
Who's the band?
Huh?